Hi. We're in the second part of the healing video, and I decided that this time I'm going to talk about uh, some of my healing process from the original video where I talked about the things like fear of being physically hurt and things like that. And I'm also going to tell you what I still struggle with as far as I know. And what I mean by that is I only know where I am. I can't really gauge if there's other things that I don't know about yet, because if I did know about them, then there's nothing I can do about what I don't know. So I'm going to tell you about what I do know. And also with the understanding that I am consistently and constantly growing. So, I mean, if something comes up past this and, a few weeks from now we're talking about a different type of abuse, I'll tell you if something changed or if there's more to it, or I have like an epiphany or a revelation or something changes, I'll let you know. So I'm going to start with the fear of being physically hurt. And like I said before, I'm going to be looking at notes occasionally. So then you'll know why I'm looking away. So fear of being physically hurt. I know it's still a possibility, but I now no longer live in fear of it. I don't deny the truth that some people are physically abusive or violent, but that doesn't mean that everyone is. So what I do is that I look for red flags sometimes, or I did look for red flags. I still do, but I kind of know how to handle them a little differently now, but I'm going to refer to the process a little more than where things are now. If someone says that they are physically aggressive or violent, whether it's against you or anyone else, even if it seems to make sense, I have to tell you that's usually a sign, and it's a red flag. Also, if someone has ever been physically aggressive or abusive or violent, that is also a sign. Because without actively or having had gone through something to change that, it's still there. It doesn't usually just disappear. And here's the thing, I'm not judging people from that perspective, because as I already stated, I struggled with that side of it as well, but I did actively do something to correct it, and it has been 20 plus years since anything like that has happened, physically. And I won't tell you that it's been that long since I've been verbally or emotionally abusive towards other people, but it has been that long since physically or used any violence. I also daily decide not to make that a focus. So I say things to myself like, I don't have to be afraid. So if I start to feel afraid around someone, I do say that to myself. I don't have to be afraid, because there are things that I can do. The second was sense of self. I did not have a good sense of self. So this is an ongoing thing. I allow myself to feel things in many ways privately, but then sometimes I take it to the public to practice feeling in front of people. So I'll talk about the private part first. A lot of times it doesn't even show itself except privately, and it has to start somewhere. So, privately, I would cry in front of my husband and kids, or not very often, but I did. Most of the time, privately, if I cried, it was alone. But then I started allowing myself to trust doing it around people, like my husband or my children. And then after a while, I started to take it out to the public. And what I mean by that is, like, maybe I was at a movie theater and watching a movie that made me feel some kind of way. So I let myself cry. And I know it's a dark theater, but you got to start somewhere. So I would let myself feel things that way. And I also allowed myself to express displeasure at things. And you have to practice everything, because after a while, eventually, I learned how to do it in a nice way. And so at the beginning, it wasn't necessarily nice. It was just like this explosion of, I don't like that, or stop it, and I'm making it sound like it was okay, but probably the way I did it was not okay. So it was okay. I kind of figure everything takes some practice, especially if you've never done it before. And you can practice in your head all you want, but until you actually go out there and do something, it's all made up. So you have to actually try. And that is hard. And I know that it is, because I still have to try in areas, and I'm just trying, and I'm hoping that the longer that I do it, the better that I will get at it. I stopped using the filter of making sure it was okay to feel a certain way or not. Then I began to challenge my feelings of whether those feelings were mine, or belonged to others, or were from others' perspective. So I started questioning that, like, why do I think this? Like, why do, even questions like why did I laugh at that? Or why do I believe? That was one of the big ones, is why do I believe what I say I believe? Do I really believe it? Because if I really believed it, wouldn't I act it out? Like, at some point, I started challenging myself with that. And in a minute, I'll talk a little more about that. Which also led me to challenge whether I believed or could believe that I was loved, just based on someone telling me that I was loved. How do I know if I was? How did I know? Or how did I know if I was loving other people? So I, again, had to use a gauge of what that looked like in a healthy way. So I personally chose 1 Corinthians 13, even though it seemed out of any realm of possibility. But I think the fact that it seemed like it was out of the realm of possibility made it a little safer for me, because I knew it was not, it at least made me feel like, okay, well, it wasn't something I knew and I was just not doing. It was something that is beyond my comprehension. So I knew that I had not really had it in my life. But it was also the only place that I found that expressed what love looked like or did. Like, a lot of places, the dictionary and what people say about love seem to be not what love does, but more how it made them feel. And I really needed something tangible. So 1 Corinthians 13 is really tangible. So it was comfortable for me. Oh, that's not the right word. It wasn't comfortable. It seemed right. It seemed sturdy. I think that's a good word. It seemed sturdy. The next one is that I feared everyone and everything. And I'll just tell you that we will come back to this, as this is a more recent healing. This has taken me years, and I still struggle in many ways. I sometimes have anxiety that overwhelms me, but I use really good coping skills, like going to a happy place, which, if you've never had to do that, like, it is good to have one. And now I have a new one. I recently went to Italy, and I know all the stuff that's going on right now. I did recently go there before that was a thing. And yeah, that's a happy place. Also, things like taking a break or walking away when there's tension in a room, or things like that, have helped me. And I do many other things that ultimately help this area of struggle, like, and I know that a lot of people may or may not agree with this, but I sometimes do use CBD, and I know that you don't have to agree with me. I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just telling you that it was something that helped me, and it helped to calm my body down, because sometimes internally I wasn't feeling what my body was reacting to. So I needed to calm my body down, and that did seem to help. And prayer ultimately helped me. In this case, it started to help me. like working out and eating better help areas like your complexion or your sleep, even though that's not necessarily why you're doing it. There are things that I take care of outside of directly responding to that anxiety that help me, like I eat better or occasionally exercise. That was not a big one yet. So I like to be in nature. I like to walk around in nature. Like I said, prayer, talking to and spending time with friends and family really help. But those things have kind of helped me. But this is an ongoing process, so I'll probably have to keep you updated on that one. The warped perspective of the world around me. I had a revelation that if I was open to letting go of any ideas of what I thought was true, then maybe I could learn more about myself and others and even God. Daily, I would have to decide what I thought. It was and is a very intentional process. Daily, I do that. Now, like every day. It also seems very never ending because when I think I know something, there is so much more to know. I began to realize that I struggled with hypocrisy in my own self. So of course, other people must struggle with that as well, which I kind of already picked up on other people's hypocrisy. It just took a while for me to figure out that I struggled with it as well. And I say hypocrisy as believing or saying I believed one thing, but doing something else. And that was when I challenged myself to find out what was the truth. Do I really believe this because my life does not reflect it? This was and is a hard process to face and is definitely still ongoing. Okay, now we get to probably one that's awkward and I don't really like talking about, which is lying a lot. That's embarrassing. That's it. It's just embarrassing. But, it has been a consistent process because apparently there are different types of lying. So whenever I have been or currently face a lie, I let the process play out. And what I mean by that, for example, it hit me that when I say something to protect someone's feelings, I am still lying. So, listen, I'm not saying you have to do it that way. I'm not. You do you. But I did because I did not want to ever lie because my past made it a slippery slope. I spent so much time lying about who I was. I don't want that to get muddied again. So I really do try to always tell the truth. That does not mean that I always have and that you won't. Maybe you'll catch me in one and maybe in my past you have. And good for you because they were there. Okay. But I really do. That is my intention and the choice that I'm going towards. However, if I am not asked anything, okay, so the rule is that I don't lie. I don't want to call it a rule, but that's the gauge that I use, is that I just don't lie when it is concerning me at all. However, if I'm not asked, I don't say anything either, which sometimes is really a relief. Now, I am not saying that I have the last word on what's true. That's not what I'm saying, but I do on myself and the gauge that I internally have. I know my intentions sometimes, and that's what I work from. Sometimes. And other times I just stick to a particular standard of a black and white without judgment of myself or others. This is also difficult and ongoing. The last one is I didn't have friends, but I do now. This one was a little easier concept. I started with treat others the way I wanted to be treated. It was easy at the time and it really got the job done. But of course, things get more complicated as you invite more people into your life. But it seems that I learned from each opportunity of friendship. And this ties back into me learning to not care what people think so that I could find friendship or care somewhere in there or care for them somewhere in there. Like just finding something to connect with. And here's the funny thing. I found out that I can be friends to people who aren't friends to me. What difference does it make ultimately anyway? It turns out that a lot of times it would turn out that they would just stop contacting me. because they couldn't stand or handle the way I did things or what I said or who I was, or they had unrealistic expectations, or they didn't know how to be a friend, or the really big one, and this is big, in many ways, I'm still not a good friend. But I am learning, and I am okay with that. And on that note, we're going to stop there. I will give some insight on the healing I received with the main focus on later in life, like from parent, friend, employee, and just as a person next week when we focus on emotional and verbal abuse. And I will continue to be open and as honest as possible to share in this process of healing. Thank you for listening and helping me and others pay it forward.